All right, so in activity 325, we are going to go in and explore different security frameworks. We're going to touch a little bit more on what ethical hacking is and how are companies using ethical hacking to get um, find those vulnerabilities and find those issues that are in the system. Okay, so we're going to go through and look at those four different steps and just kind of jot those things down in our important reference information sheet. So make sure that you do have that open, make sure that you do have that up, and um, we'll be adding a couple more notes for this 3.2 important reference information sheet there. And then we're going to use some different tools that companies might be using to perform this ethical hacking. So of course we got to make sure that our security lab is up and open for us. Now companies are doing ethical hacking to look at all of the information that they do have and what is available for generic users to get, right? There's a lot of information that we don't want to be public when we're looking at a company. So that is going to be listing out and disclosing what some of those potential hazards could be. We are wanting to use only legal software in that process of ethical hacking. So that is ethical hacking is us going into our system and just doing those pen tests or those penetration tests to figure out what are some of those vulnerabilities. Big picture, what are some of those vulnerabilities? Who's authorized? Who's unauthorized? What type of malicious activities are possible in the system that we have, and trying to kind of remediate that stuff. Okay. So our process, and we've seen this structure before a while ago, but there's four different phases that we're going to go look at. The first one, and we're going to be writing all of this stuff down here too, but the first phase is our reconnaissance phase. That is us going in, looking at what that overall network structure looks like. If I open up this OneNote, or um, you get your notebook out, or that yellow sheet that we were highlighting our map here, that has all of that's our network structure. That is just doing some recon. We know that only FTP files should be between pump PLC and pump monitor, and FTP from pump monitor to Web 01. We shouldn't be FTPing from our Web 01 over to our pump PLC. That's just not how that structure works. So in that recon phase, we are trying to configure all of that stuff, look at the structure, what makes sense. Now, our scanning phase, we're just going in and looking at what types of services are and software are running on each of these hosts that we have. Compromising is us doing that pen test. So we are launching those exploits. We are looking at those vulnerabilities that are in the system to make sure, like, is this actually legit or not? And then obviously the remediation phase is we're going to close up those compromises that we had. We're going to fix any of those system vulnerabilities that we uncovered in our scanning or in our compromise section or any of those previous phases, and getting that stuff all taken care of. So our first thing that we are going to be looking at is going to be our reconnaissance phase. So we're looking at the network, understanding the structure, seeing what are we doing, okay? What ports should be open, what not, what's open and running, and we are going to do this thing called knocking on ports of computers to discover the things that we've talked about, the file transfers, the secure sign-ins, our HTTP, those different services that are there and what that's looking like. So we're going to go back to our Zen map here and take a look at what we need to do and explore that topology of our water treatment facility. Now we got to remember some of these IP addresses are just for our PLTW cybersecurity stuff, like this whole system. So we don't really care about that. But again, looking at those IP addresses and making sure that we know what are we using here in this water treatment facility is important. Okay. So I've got that launched up. We are good to go there. Let's open up ZenMap from that desktop, right? Or our start menu. I already had that opened up. And my first step of the recon phase is to complete a ping scan to uncover the overall network topology, including our host information. So we've done this stuff in ZenMap before. We're going to do the same. Target is going to be that 10.2.0.0 through 24 for our IP address. And then instead of a quick scan like we had done before, we are going to complete this ping scan. So I'm going to click on ping scan and then scan that. And it might take a second to show up in this ZenMap system. So we can pause there for a second. All right, so my scan is done here looking at this ZenMap. Looks very similar, right? It is a scan that is looking at all of the different hosts that we have in our system. But the other things that we can see in this Nmap output are all of these different MAC addresses. And a MAC address, we've talked about it a little bit, but it's just another type of unique identifier. But this is specific to the network that it is on. Okay, so it's an identifier in the specific network. It still has its IP addresses, right? 10201, but a MAC address is focused on that individual network. So in this case, this is the network number that it has in that local water treatment facility. Okay, so it's listing out those different MAC addresses there. We can look at, and this is kind of cool, we can look at what that topology looks like if I click on that topology diagram. Now, not super great to see, and I don't need to be looking at 10201. Maybe I'll go to 10205, our pump PLC, but I can go in and zoom these different things. I can see a different legend there, and it lists out, okay, hosts that have fewer than 3 ports. Maybe it is a router, a switch, or a wireless access point, all of that type of stuff. So these are going to be here. We can save these different graphics and see what we've got. Okay, now you can change that zoom slider there as well. And I can make that a little bit more full screen here so we can see what's going on here. But that's just kind of a way that we can go in and look at what that actual topology is. So step F, whenever you run a scan, the specific Nmap command and its results are temporarily saved. We can observe that scans tab. That's exactly what we did in that ping scan. And that's just going to be listed there. Okay, so when we're looking at that ZenMap. Now we want to save that scan as a PDF here in step 4. So we've saved this before. From our menu bar, I'm going to click on scan and then choose that print. Now let's make sure that we are printing that as a PDF. We want to use this stuff. Again, that's the automatic default. I'm going to go in and click print. Then a window is going to pop up, that output window, and we are going to just make sure that this is on our desktop. And I'm going to save this as your name underscore ping scan. Your name underscore ping scan. So we can reference that information a little bit later. Oh, I'm going to change that to my desktop. Whoopsies. And that is saved. Okay, so that's one thing that we're going to do when we are in our recon phase, when we're just scanning and looking at what our network is and making that map, seeing what we've got going on. Our next step is to complete a deeper scan of a host or hosts. So Pump PLC is a critical path. It is a critical part of your network. So we're going to focus on that in our scan to get some more detailed information about the different software, about those services that it offers. So now in my target section, I'm going to kind of take that out. Now I'm just focused on 10205, and I'm going to select the Quick Scan Plus. Quick Scan Plus from the profile list. If we were like to choose the Intense Scan, all TCP port, that would just be an insane amount of time to run because this is a big system. So we're just going to do Quick Scan Plus. That'll give us a little bit more information. So now I'm going to go in and click on scan there. And it might be taking, it says it's going to take 1 or 2 minutes to complete. What is happening in that Quick Scan Plus section is that it is scanning 100. There's lots and lots of different ports out there, but 100 of the most common or well-known ports that are on that host. So let's just pause there and make sure that we can get a nice output in our Nmap output tab is where we're going to be at next. Okay, so mine actually did not take too terribly long here, but with that Quick Scan Plus, I am on 10205, and my Nmap output is listing out all of these different ports that are open right now. I see that I've got 91 closed ports, And it's also telling me that they're open. It lists out what specific service that is running in those different open ports. Now we can know this. We have used port 21. That's for our file transfers. Port 22 is for our SSH. Port 80 is HTTP. Now those are some pretty common ports that we might just get pretty familiar with as we continue to move through this. But then it is also listing the different versions. Now, I'm not too concerned about you knowing all of this stuff right now, but it is showing the version of what that service is, okay, and then what's actually that application that's running through that. So that's going to be some important information to also have. So here on step 7, we are going to save that scan as a PDF. So then I'm going to click on scan again, print, Microsoft PDF. We can go back to step 4 if we're understanding or we need a little bit of help, but I'm just going to say print again. It's back to my desktop, and I'm going to say our Bosman. Now this isn't the ping scan, it's the pump PLC. And quick scan plus. We're just going to be referencing what that different scan is because we're going to be comparing some of those things there too. So I'm clicking on save. That should hopefully be saved in my desktop. Right now I see those 2 PDFs. Now what we need to do is we need to throw that into our guacamole drive. Okay, so I'm going to just select both of those 2 scans here by holding down the control key, click copy. I'm going to throw that into guacamole in my downloads folder. And then I can see that here on my local machine. So then I'm just going to show that in the folder again. Really quickly, just throw those into my cybersecurity folder where all of that other stuff is saved. Now, maybe I actually want to go in and create a new folder and call this 325 materials, whatever. And I might just throw that in there just to keep things a little bit more organized. So I just copy and pasted those into my cybersecurity, created a new folder, and threw those in there in my 325 materials. Up to you with what you want to do, what makes the most sense for you. Okay. We are going to now in step 9, we're going to open up our save scans onto our local school machine. So after we have those saved, let's, like it says, just go in and open these things up. Cybersecurity 325. And in our ping scan, we are going to confirm the IP addresses that match our topology diagram of the water treatment facility network. Recall that some of the addresses are responsible for running the virtual lab, so I'm not going to be too worried about that. I'm going to open up that ping scan, and this is what we've got. I'm going to get my topology diagram there. Are these things matching? Man, or I sure hope so. Resize that. My nice stuff here. So my IP address is 10202. Okay, that's not any of these IP addresses. I'm going to assume that that is for the virtual machine here. So 10205, booyah, pump PLC. 10206, my pump monitor. 10207 is this Web 01, and 10208 is this Target Windows 01. 10209, again, we're going to just make that assumption that it is for our virtual machine. Now, of course, we don't actually want to assume those things like in the real world, but we're going to make that assumption right now. If you see a different IP address and some different things going on in that scan that if this is the real world and we don't understand, or like we know that that's not an IP address for one of the different hosts that are in your company, okay, well then that's obviously like a prob, right? So keep that in mind. Now let's go in and open up our Quick Scan Plus. Okay, Quick Scan Plus. Let's take a look at what we need to do here. I'm going to close out of that job number 1 there. So for our Quick Scan Plus, that is just kind of our little printout, right, of what we had seen in our in that Zen map. So what does the scan provide about this specific host that isn't available in the quick scan that was used in activity 3.2.3? Now we can go in, probably are going to want to be opening that up as well. So I've got my baseline files. Oh, I got to find these things here. Okay, here's my quick scan. So what is going to be a little bit different about these two things? Obviously, this is significantly more condensed, but looking at the quick scan, okay, we have our different services that are being running. Again, this is on 10205. This is on 10205. So we've got those different ports. It says that it's open and our services are matching the same. Now, again, that we can see and we looked at, gosh, the version of what we are listing out is obviously going to be something that is different. Okay. And then looking at that operating system there as well. So what we are also going to want to do is record that detailed information for the required services on Pump PLC. So we need to think about, what does our administrator need on Pump PLC? And what are those operational requirements that we have in our Zen map table, and document only the necessary services that are going to be listed. So again, we got to go and open up that Zen map table. There's 1,000,007 things that we've got opened up right now. I'm going to launch that into a new window here. And we need to look at our critical services for Pump PLC. Now, we see that the critical stuff is port 21 and port 22. Port 21 and port 22. That is something that we are needing to be writing down and recording. So we've got a lot of open stuff here. And we talked about that the other day. We probably don't need all of those different things, only those necessary services. So for the essential services, which of these, if any, should be accessible from outside the firewall? It tells us we need to think about the purpose of the firewall and how you as a network administrator performed all of your tests and all of your analyses. So let's kind of dive into that for a second here. Now, when we're looking at these essential services, what should be accessible outside of the firewall? The essential ones are port 21 and port 22, that FTP and that SSH. Now we've got the versions there again, awesome. But what needs to be accessible outside the firewall? Probably nothing, right? I mean, if we're thinking about this, we don't need to be accessing these things outside of our little space that we've got. Now, the other thing that you could consider, okay, and again, it's up to you, but if you were thinking, well, maybe a network administrator would maybe need to be outside of the facility in order to, and be in an outside network, not in that water treatment facility, and allow maybe, our network staff to work from home a little bit. If they can do all their stuff online, what are going to be some of those, that could be something that we would be able to allow, right? You don't have to be on site all of the time to do this, but okay, well, whatever. That's going to be one thing that we would need to consider. And if we were to allow our employees to work from home, there's going to be a lot of stipulations. They're going to have their own kind of virtual network that they would need to be running into and connect in to the water treatment facility. Okay, so that's going to be something that we would be looking at here as well. Now, step D is, how could unethical hackers use information from these scans to have as their advantage in developing an attack plan? If a horrible human being had this information, it is listing out and it is telling them what services are accessible based on what this scan says. And they could have some general idea of what our topology could look like. Now, that's useful for hackers because they can exploit and develop that strategy on how to navigate the network through these different open ports that are there. Okay, so that's something that we definitely don't want this readily available to the public. Now, when we are going in and let's just jot down a few of these notes in the reconnaissance section in our important reference information here to make sure that we're getting this stuff. All right, so I'm going to make that a little bit smaller here. I'm going to insert a row below. And let's go take a look at what do we need to remember with reconnaissance. Okay, so I'm going to type in reconnaissance. It's kind of a tough word to spell. And I just want us to write down a few of these different steps on how to actually do this recon stuff. Okay, so step one, I'm going to change that, sorry. Step one, we need to go in And I'm going to change my font because, again, I'm a psycho. It's not going to be bolded either. We are going to open up Nmap, ZenMap from our desktop. Our target is going to be 10.2.0.0 through 24, and our profile is going to be the quick scan plus. We're going to start the scan, and then we are going to check the ports and hosts tab for our pump PLC, which is 10.2.0.5. Hosts tab for 10.2.0.5, and this is all on that first part in ethical hacking is 3.2.5. So those are the steps that we are going to have listed there. Okay. Now we can go in and let's insert a row below. And now we are going to dive into this scanning process. So back in my activity here, where our second phase is going to be looking at those specific services and the software that is running. Okay. What application versions, what operating systems are all of these things on? We need to use a special scanning tool. What we're going to look at is this thing called Nessus, which is detecting and exploiting, maybe trying to exploit some of those different network vulnerabilities that we have there. Again, really, really important that companies are doing this ethical hacking, doing the recon, the scanning, and all of that stuff to make sure that they're in the best position to be successful as an organization. Okay, so we've got a map of services that are running for each of the hosts from those Nmap scans, and now we're going to use this application called Nessus to scan the hosts on the network for some different vulnerabilities that are going to be listed there. So I'm going to close out of that different downloads folder here. Again, make that a little bit smaller, clean up my stuff, and we are needing to do a couple things before we start this Nessus user interface. We're going to run a couple of the commands in PowerShell. So let's open up PowerShell here, and we are going to restart this Nessus service to make sure that we've got a clean scan in our security lab. So in PowerShell, I'm going to type in net stop and tenable Nessus. Okay. That is just saying that all services are stopping. Yep, we've done this successfully. So we've stopped it, and now we're going to just redo and start that up. So I'm going to say net start tenable Nessus. And now that service has started again, and it's back to our users and our administrator. Let's throw that into our important reference information. Okay, there's multiple steps that we are needing to do with this. So I'm going to, in my scanning part here, again, this is 3.2.5. I'm going to go in and open PowerShell and type net stop tenable Nessus and net start. Make sure that we have that spelled correctly. All right, so that's the first thing that I'm going to go do in the scanning process. Now, it's telling us from our Windows start, we are going to select the Tenable Network Security and this Nessus Web Client. All right, so I can minimize out of that, who cares? Move this little guy over. I got my start menu, and I am wanting to find the Tenable Network Security here. Clicking on that. And this Nessus Web Client. So you are probably going to see a warning right away at the beginning. If you're warned about that site being secure, we need to go in and click on Advanced and then proceed to localhost if you have that message that pops up. You might not, but that's what we are needing to do. All right, so that's what mine says. My connection's not private. I'm going to go in and click on Advanced. It's telling me that hackers and attackers might be able to steal your information from localhost. No, we don't want that. Messages, no thank you. Credit cards, absolutely not. but they're not trying to do this right now. We're just needing to look at that. So I'm going to click on advanced and proceed to that local host. Okay, so this is going to be our our login there, where we are putting in our credentials of our username and our password. If it takes a little bit to load, that's okay. If you have errors, like it says, go and quit the browser, relaunch, try to do that step again, and we should be all right. Okay, so I'm going to type in my admin and password there. When I am putting in those credentials, it's going to load for me. And then what we're going to do is we are going to scan for those known vulnerabilities on our host of interest. And again, we're really caring about Pump PLC here. So I'm going to click on this new scan button, and I'm going to kind of resize this just a little bit. And then I'm going to select advanced scan. Okay, so I've got I'm going to scroll that over, new scan, and then advanced scan. Okay, so you'll need to resize your window to make sure that you can see everything. But now I'm clicking on new scan and then going into my advanced scan. And then we need to go in and look at some of these different general settings here. And this is taking a while for all of this stuff, but we are going to be okay. Now, in these general settings, we need to enter our following information. We're just going to call this your name, advanced scan 1. The description is us looking at this pump PLC advanced scan. We're going to save this in my scans folder, and our target is going to be this 10205 is our pump PLC. Okay, so I'm scrolling down here. I'm going to then go in and click on before I click save, we need to go and look at our report section, and we are needing to override the normal verbosity, which we are going to say yes, we want to report as much information as possible, and then we're going to leave all of those other settings as is. Now on our advanced scan, we're going to verify the following setting, just making sure that nothing has changed. We need to go in and disable those safe checks. That is not going to be enabled there. And again, we're just going to go in, leave all of these different settings as is on step 16. All right, so step 17, we are going to save this as a new configuration. So that scan has been saved successfully. I can see that name there. It's in my scans folder. Now to run the scan, we are going to click and select that checkbox next to our advanced scan name near the top right of the page. You are going to click on more and select launch. And then we are going to launch that again to confirm the actual scan. Okay. It's going to take a while to run here. There's lots of different ports that it's talking to. Maybe if we could have messed something up if it takes like a super long time, but it might not be automatic here. We can see what's going on here. It's on schedule, on demand, and then we will get moving on to our next step. So step number 19, we're going to have a couple scans going on here at the same time. When your scan is still running, we are going to click on this advanced scan and review the scan details. We're going to review the scan details. We can see that this is running. What time did it start? And what's going on here? Okay, so now it's looking at these different vulnerabilities. It's only at 12%, right? So we've got some scanning to do. So we can go in. This is, super information. It's already seeing some vulnerabilities that we have listed. Okay, that's kind of cool. But kind of back to my hosts tab. And we can just kind of read a little bit about what Nessus is. But we talked about that before. I mentioned that before, that it is going to be something that is scanning our network to find some of those different vulnerabilities that might be listed. Important that we're able to get that information. A lot of people are having this as like network engineers and IT people are having that as something that they're using all of the time. And so that's just kind of what we've got going on. So it's looking for, in this scan, this is interesting. So in our scan, it's looking for open ports on the remote host of Pump PLC. The most common type of scan is this TCP handshake. So you are finding those different open ports there, and it's also in our OSI model. Okay, cool. If Nessus finds an open port, it is going to be testing that different service that's going to be there. And if the service is working, if there's a bug or an oversight, maybe there is a weakness in the program, that's going to show up in that vulnerability, and that's going to be an issue. So we want to make sure that those ports are doing what they need to do, and we're going to go and take a look at that. All right, now step 20 is needing you to research an example of a plugin and impact an exploit of a service they may have in the system. This is just to fill some idle time. I'm not going to lie to you. If you are interested in that in step 20, absolutely go to that Nessus Tenable website. You can read those different things, but not too serious. I mean, take a look at it. It's all right. But so the scan might still be running, but we can see these vulnerabilities. Now my scan has stopped. It was a 5-minute scan here. So I can go in and click on these vulnerabilities and see what is happening here, kind of this pie chart of the different vulnerabilities that we've got going on. So we've got a couple critical vulnerabilities here, a medium, some low vulnerabilities, and then just some general information there. Now at step 22, it says you should see a critical vulnerability related to Pro FTPD. If you don't have that, it's probably still scanning. We should all have the same vulnerabilities that are listed, and we just need a screenshot of this, and we just need to see that this is a big vulnerability. So I'm going to go in and actually select this and get a little bit more information about what this is. Again, you can click back vulnerabilities, but we're going to be okay. So we can see that host, we can see what port that this is on. It's a critical sort of vulnerability that we have listed here. Now, in our description, we are needing to review some of these details. So using those screenshots, in our description, we are on step number 24. We are looking at what these different exploited services are, and all that jazz. So what's the service in the software version exploited in the vulnerability? Our service is going to be this. We need to do a little upgrade. Is that FTP type of stuff here? I can keep kind of scrolling down. What's that software version that is causing these different problems here? So that's also something that we're needing to go in and look at. What ports, what protocols. We've got our port information here. It's port 21, TCP, FTP again. When was the plugin published? This was June 16th of 2015. And what are these solutions? Okay, so our solutions, we need to make sure that we are upgrading on this Pro FTP system. So it is So this type of flaw is reading and writing these different files on our web path. So some important information that we need to have there. So those are just some things that we would be jotting down here, wanting to look at, what version this is, what that ID number would be, little things that we should be listing out. This Pro FTP mod copy information disclosure is going to be something that we definitely want to make sure that we get fixed. All right, so that is one of those vulnerabilities that we have, and we are going to keep kind of scrolling down here. Kind of a little information about World War II. The United States office ran this big advertising campaign on loose lips might sink ship, so shut your mouth. Servicemen and citizens to avoid careless discussions that could undermine the war effort. Bring the boys home and ladies. All right, anyway, back in step 25, we are going to go in and return to our My Scans page, link on the left, and the scan should be complete. We've got that little check mark there that says that it's completed. Hopefully that is done. If it's not, Mine took about 5 minutes, but yours might be different. We could go in and stop that scan if we needed to as well. But now we're going to go and save our scan. And there are three different formats that we are going to save this as. We're going to try to get as much information as humanly possible. So let's go back and select the scan, click on our history tab, and then click the checkbox next to your scan. So I'm going to click on that little checkbox. Now, the first type of scan that we are going to save is going to be an executive summary. An executive summary. So I will, on the upper right, I'm going to click on export, and we're going to have that be HTML. And the report that we're going to just be having is our executive summary. I'm going to click export, and that should be automatically saving to our file explorer there. So I'm just going to open up that page. And an executive summary, we can see this is a very high level view of what is going on. You can click on that host's executive summary. 10205, these are not active links, interesting. But we see that we've got a custom critical, no high, we've got 3 medium types of vulnerabilities, 2 low, and then the rest are just going to be that information that we're not too concerned about. But a very high level scan. What are we seeing? Not really going into detail about what do you need to do to fix those vulnerabilities, but this is just going to be listing out what do we have. And this is automatically saving into our downloads folder, so you can just verify. Hopefully, this file is saved in the browser's downloads file. Oh, okay. It would not downloads file yet. So we need to navigate there and rename that file. So I'm going to click on my 3 buttons up at the top, select downloads, and this is my advanced scan. So I just want to show that in the folder. Actually, it's there too. We can go in and rename that. I should have looked a little bit further here. And we're just going to select, instead of advanced scan 1, we're going to just name this why can I not spell? Summary. All right, cool. All right, that's my executive summary. And then we're going to make a customize. So I'm going to take out that downloads, close out of that, and now I am back into custom. Same type of thing. I'm in my history tab. I'm going to click export. I'm going to click on HTML. Instead of executive summary, let's customize this. And in our custom option, we are going to vulnerabilities group by host. Okay, we're going to leave all of that stuff, and then I'm going to go in and click export. And that same thing, we should show that now in our folder, and that is just called our unconfirmed CR download. Maybe I didn't wait, actually. That should be our Boston Advanced Scan and then those other numbers and stuff. So I'm going to rename that. I might have messed that up here. Custom.html. Okay, that's just another type of file that we've got. I'm just going to keep that in Google Chrome here. Again, we can see a little bit more information there, what the name is, what operating system that it's on, that IP address, what that MAC address. Again, that number that's on the specific network. Again, it's got our different vulnerabilities there, but it's got some more information for us. And then our last one is going to be this raw type of export. So I'm just going to go in, click on export, and now Nessus. Now we are just taking that download, and we're just going to call this raw Nessus. So I'm going to wait for a second for this to be loading. It is done. Show that in folder again, and custom executive summary. Oh, for crying out loud. There's my last one. Rename it. It needs to be that Nessus file. And I am going to call this raw. raw nessus.nessus. All right, so I've got those 3 files that are listed there. We need to make sure again that this is downloaded onto our school machine. So I'm gonna select, copy, throw that into Guacamole here. Boom. That's in my downloads folder. And let's just make sure that these are in our 325 folder. Okay, so I'm going to show these in my folder again. I have boom, boom. Copying those, putting them into my cybersecurity folder that I've got, my 325 materials. And really important that we're naming these files correctly, right? So we can really pay attention to what's going on in our notebook, all of those instructions, and just be okay with what's happening here, okay? So 325, those are the materials that I'm listing. And let's kind of jot down a couple of these notes of what we did in our scanning process. So we opened up PowerShell, we typed in that Nessus type of system. We started it, we stopped it. And then what we actually went is we need to go to that Nessus web client in our, looking at that start menu. Okay. So you're going to, if there's an error, we need to click advanced, proceed to localhost. Okay. Then our username is admin, password is admin. You are going to click on new scan and then click advanced scan. We went into those general settings tab, make a name, and our target was 10205, which is our pump PLC. In our report tab, we are going to check the override normal verbosity, click report as much info as possible. In the advanced tab, and those were just like the initial settings before we had started the scan, you are going to turn off save checks. We're going to save it. And then we're going to go in and check your scan. Click more and click launch. And then it would be running those scans and we can go in and take a look at those different vulnerabilities that were listed there. But that was all right away in this initial My Scans type of stuff. All right, so we have that taken care of here. We have done our scanning. We can close out of that system of Nessus and those different reports that we have. And we're going to close out of that. And now we are in our third phase of our ethical hacking process, and that is going to be our compromising, okay? So we are launching those exploits in those vulnerabilities and seeing if it's legit, okay? If that's a true type of exposure in the system that we have. And we are going to be using this security framework tool to do those different pen tests. It's just going to be processes that we are needing to go in and follow. Okay, so we're going to use a framework called Metasploit to pen test that water treatment facility and determine, okay, what are we doing here? How resilient, how safe is this? So back in Target Windows 01, we're going to go and launch our PowerShell. Again, I just already have that running from our NetStart stuff. And we are going to start the database that Metasploit uses. So that is msfdb start. I'm going to, might take a second, msfdb start. Take a second. And then to actually start that Metasploit, we are needing to type in MSF console. Okay, so MSF, starting database, we gotta wait for that. MSF console. Give it a second to load, and then we can kind of move from there.